Okay, this has taken much longer than I thought it would. Gazillion tries and whatnot. Hopefully this will work. Hi guys, my name is Janie. I am a mother of one and our family's moving to Norway. Today we're gonna take it easy, so sit down, relax, grab a cup of tea or something, because I'll just take you through the top 5 things that we did when we were making a decision to move to Norway. So make yourself comfortable, let's get to it. So before we start, if you like what you hear, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because I'll be releasing a lot of content on the move, what we do, relocation company, immigration, settling in Norway, anything and everything that we will encounter on this journey. Also, don't forget to hit the thumbs up or the thumbs down, just to let me know what you think. But like I said, it's going to be an easy one today. I'll just tell you about the top 5 tips or things that we did when we were deciding whether to go to Norway, and why actually until the very last minute the answer was no, and what made us change our mind. So stay tuned and let's start with number 1. Number 1, SWOT. Not that kind of SWOT. Is the strength, weaknesses, opportunities and threats diagram. I learned it years ago and I find it the most helpful tool for decision making, simply because it splits the situation into subjective and objective. We selected strengths and weaknesses to be the subjective part and opportunities and threats to be the objective part. And in that way you get to put in what you think, but also you get to put in the facts that you find out. And honestly, I feel like that has laid the basis essentially for all our activities, for questions to ask, things to research, or whatever else we needed to do. It has changed so much throughout the whole journey. So it started being very against the move. A lot of things were in the weakness and the threat section, and I'll actually put the final version here somewhere so that you can have a look at it as well to see what we sort of were looking at. But SWOT was great, and that was the first thing we did. So the first tip or trick or whatever you want to call it that you might want to do when you have a big move like this happening is to grab a tool like this, a decision-making tool. It can be a decision tree, it can be SWOT, whatever you know, or whatever you want to learn about and try it, because there's no better way to get your thoughts on paper or dump them somewhere and then going back to them and revising them and actually seeing how the decision and the situation is evolving and where it's going. You'll see in the, or you have seen in the screenshot I posted just a moment ago, how the diagram looked for us. It was not very positive towards the move, and actually, to give you a bit of a sneak preview for the final part, when I tell you why we actually nearly didn't move, SWOT was one of the reasons. And I'll tell you a bit more about that at the end of the video. But the first tip, do a SWOT. Not that kind of type. You do not want to storm a country or whatever, but do a decision-making tool thing to get yourself started on the decision journey. Number 2. Now this is something that you may not be able to do, or not everybody is able to do, but it is so important, especially if you're moving to a different country, and that's to visit. I cannot stress that enough. If you're moving within a country, you more or less know what sort of culture you're going into, what sort of situation. You've probably heard of the place a little bit, or you can research it much easier in your native tongue. But if you're switching countries like we are, we're going from UK to Norway, then that's an entirely different country, entirely different culture, different looks, landscape, people, everything. And as much as we can read about it, and as much as we can watch videos on YouTube about it, nothing beats a first-hand experience. And that's what we did. We got so lucky, and essentially we're very grateful for this opportunity, that my partner needed to have an in-person interview at the company. And the company offered to pay for all our expenses, not just for my partner's, but for my flight ticket as well, for our child's flight ticket, for the hotel where we'd be staying, whatever we'd need. They were very forthcoming. At the end, we decided to just take them up on the offer to pay for the hotel because we didn't want to be too financially indebted to them in case we did say no. But still, that gave us the opportunity to go there and see the place firsthand. And honestly, my reaction to Norway versus my partner's reaction to Norway, and maybe that will one day be a video, was entirely different. So I grew up in mainland Europe in Czech Republic. And so going to Norway, and I know Norway is a different country and whatever you want to tell me, but going to Norway kind of felt like going back home, if that makes sense. Not only because cars drive on the right side of the road, take it as you will, but because the architecture and the general feel of the place felt familiar. It wasn't as though we were moving to Beijing, let's say, which would be entirely different and entirely unfamiliar. It felt good. The language was a bit startling because it is different, but again, I already speak enough languages to start seeing overlaps and to kind of be excited about the prospect of learning a language, or of trying to play a little guess game of whatever words mean. So I was pretty excited. Before going to Norway, I was on the fence. I wasn't entirely sure. It felt a bit risky. It felt like we'll be abandoning a lot of things here. I wasn't sold on it. But having gone, I did a flip. I was like, do you know what? I can actually see this working for us. The place is nice. It feels good. I felt good there. Let's try and make it happen. However, my partner, he was very excited about the job opportunity and going to Norway before the visit. Once we were there, he was like, oh, so beautiful, the landscape. Oh, the car drives so nice. Oh, the roads are so good. Then he came head to head with a language when he was parking the car and did an entirely opposite flip. He was like, I don't know if I can do this. I am old enough, like, maybe I'm too old to learn a new language. The language for him was the biggest culture shock he received in Norway. And also essentially the biggest blocker for him that we had to think about and seriously consider when we were making our decision. So you see how a visit to a place can drastically shift each person's perspective, and that's why it's so important. Because if you're changing a job or if you're going to a new place, you're likely going to get an improvement on your life. And that can mean whatever that means to you. That can mean just living in a entirely different environment to where you're living now. Or you want to live in a similar environment to where you're living now because you want to be familiar. You don't want to really expose yourself to too much change. That's absolutely fine. But you won't know just what kind of environment you're entering unless you go there and see it first for yourself. And so my next recommendation, the tip number 2, is go visit the place. If you're changing a job and your employer cannot pay for you to go and see the place, or doesn't want to, or whatever the reason, if you really want to go, honestly, take time off and go. Take it as a holiday and explore, because it is invaluable. It gives you a first-hand experience that's gonna form such a solid base for your decision that nothing else will. No amount of research can beat first-hand experience. Tip number 3, crunch the numbers. Now, that's what we did as well, because as you might remember from my earlier videos, my work situation wasn't entirely clear when we made the decision to go to Norway. I may have not had a job when we would have gone, or I may have had a job when we would have gone. It wasn't very clear. Now, that has all been resolved. I will keep my job. But because we were working with uncertainty at that time, we had to crunch our numbers. And what I mean by that is we had to take into account the income my partner would be getting and the expenditure we would be having moved. So that's rent, anything like council tax, if there's council tax in Norway, any services we'd have to pay, anything and everything that would essentially tell us, are we losing out on money moving to Norway? Are we breaking even? Or are we actually getting an improvement? Now, in the previous tip, I did say that if you move to a new environment, you probably want to change. You want an improvement in your life. Now, for some people, that's just going to a new place, being surrounded by diversity or being surrounded by nature. And you may be happy to break even or take a pay cut. I certainly know a few people who were so desperate in their jobs that they wanted to get out as fast as they could, happy to take a pay cut just to get out and live elsewhere. And that's fine. Obviously, our situation is a bit different. We have a child that's dependent on us, and we can't really take a pay cut. Also, because our long-term and short-term financial plans do not allow for a pay cut. And for us personally, an improvement in our life is not only either breaking even or getting a financial improvement, it's also the environment. But in this case, we had to crunch the numbers. And so what we did is we ran the worst case scenario, the good case scenario, the best case scenario, anything and everything in between, just to see if this move was financially viable. And I would recommend that you do that too, because it gives you an idea of what it is you're going to be working with. If you go to a new place and you actually end up being less financially solvent, then that's going to affect your experience there as well, because you might be in this exciting new environment with all these exciting new things to try, but are you actually going to have the cash to do those? So that's what we did, and it was amazingly informative, because even if I were to lose a job, not a job, my job, we would still be breaking even. And that was the main thing that we needed to know, because we were working with that uncertainty. If our numbers would tell us, if Jamie loses her job, you guys are going to be losing out this amount of money, then that would have severely affected how we would have decided to go ahead, or what our decision would have been. So, crunch the numbers. It is a mind-numbing task, but it is invaluable. Tip number 4. Now, you've probably already guessed this one, given how much I have been yabbering about it over every single video. Research. Do your research. But not just the legal stuff, not just the heavy, important stuff. Do the mundane stuff. Do the, what kind of shops are there in your target country? How can I say this? How can I say that? How are the people? How is the culture? What's the party life like? Whatever you want to know about the place, however silly, however small, do it. Because if you've not been able to visit, then this is your only point of reference. If you have been able to visit, then this just adds layers onto your experience and further informs your decision. And essentially, I went down the research rabbit hole. I have looked into anything and everything about the society. How can you integrate? What are the unspoken social rules in Norway? I even went as far as looking into the social services statistics on how many children are taken away from homes. Don't ask me why, I'll probably make a video on this, but you see, anything and everything is good. It will take some time, but it helps you learn about the place where you want to go. And it gives you an idea of what you're getting yourself into. And we needed to know that, obviously, because we're moving as a unit and we're intending to stay in Norway long term, ideally settling there for forever. So we needed to know, I needed to know. And so I will forever advocate for research. Do your research, do your reading. Anything and everything is the best way to go. Also, part of that research can be comparing the living expenses between the place where you live now and the place that you are going to live. For example, numbao.com, and I'll put a link below in the description box, is a great place to start. It doesn't have information on all the cities and towns, but it has the majority of information that you may need to sort of launch yourself off of to further then look into things that you're interested in. Also, a piece of interesting information, thanks Hannah Goldman for your video where I found that, you can take 6 bottles of alcohol in your suitcase into Norway, because alcohol in Norway is dear. So there you go. Now I know what's gonna be in my suitcase, possibly, next to like nappies and vitamins and whatnot. Part of your research can also form talking to people that have lived in your target place or target country, or people who have lived in a similar area. For example, we have friends who live in Sweden, but we were also in contact with a couple that lives in Norway, in the town where we're going to be moving to. The company put us in touch with them. And that's essentially another best way to get your information. Next to the visit, talking to people who already live in your target place is gold. A gold mine where you can get so much information and so much goodness. I remember we spoke to the couple that lives in the town where we'll be moving for like an hour and a half, and we had to cut it short because they had a newborn and we didn't want to hold them too long. But we had such conversations about anything and everything: buying a house, childcare, culture, making friends. And it was great because that couple already lived there for 10 years. So they had that experience of, oh, how was it in the start? And how is it now, 10 years down the line? It was incredible. Also, we spoke to our friends in Sweden. Now, don't stone me. I know Sweden, Norway, not the same country. They're neighboring. In my mind's eye, Norway and Sweden are kind of like Czech Republic and Slovakia, or Germany and Austria. They're countries that are separate, individual, but they are very similar, culturally speaking, language speaking. So it was another good reference point to see how did it go for our friends in Sweden. We also spoke to another couple that we know who have not lived in Scandinavia, but they have done a lot of international moves, from America to CERN, Switzerland, to France, to UK, and I think they might be going to China or something. So they were able to tell us about the adaptation time, adaptation methods, how long does it take, what to expect, how to manage our expectations as well. The one thing I would caution against, though, is to go and talk to your Aunt Lizzie. Don't get me wrong, we all love our Aunt Lizzie. She's lovely. That village she lives in is absolutely amazing, and she does the best cakes. But Aunt Lizzie, who has never walked out of that village, who lived there her whole life, and who is against you moving to where you want to go, isn't a very good reference point. We love Aunt Lizzie, but Aunt Lizzie isn't really speaking from experience. So, you probably get where I'm going with this. Talk to people who have the experience about what you want to do, because they will know the best of what it takes and what you can expect. Final tip number 5. So, final tip number 5 is probably the most torturous one, but also the most important one, and that's to let it stew. You have done your research, you have crunched your numbers, you have visited the place, and you've done your decision-making tool thing. You have a lot of information in your head right now, and it can be confusing. It was for us at certain times, so do not make any rash decisions. For a move like this, a big move, moving to a different place, be it in your own country or a different country, you cannot make rash decisions, unless you're that kind of person. That's absolutely fine. Some people just go for it and they're fine, and that's great. For us, again, family, we need to make these decisions a little bit more, be a bit more sure, a bit more calculated about what we're doing. So let it stew. We thought about it for a long time. To give you an idea of the timeline, my partner first heard about the opportunity in October. In November, I think he started having interviews. It took us until beginning of January. So we're talking about 2.5, 3 months that it took us to make this decision. And I know somebody must have said, or I've heard it somewhere, that the worst part about making a decision is the indecision that precedes it. Because anything can happen. And I remember us going between, oh yes, let's go to Norway, great idea, it's gonna be amazing, to maybe not. How about we stay in England and play it safe? If you remember my first video, the Welcome to the Tribe, I mentioned the risk and reward kind of idea. where the high risk and high reward, so high risk being moving to Norway, but also potentially much better life, and low risk and low reward being staying in UK, which is safe, but also not getting much of a pay increase or a better environment to live in with the current way the country's going, possibly not even the best country to live in. So we were bouncing between yes and no so much. I cannot even begin to count the times. But I cannot stress enough just how important it is for you to let it stew. Think about it, do go through the swings. They're important because every swing tells you a new thing. Every high tells you things you're excited about, and every high is brought down by a doubt. And when you get down with that doubt, you learn more about the place, you research more. You research more about the place. And again, you go high, and that high gives you another exciting thing. And then again, doubt. It's amazing, honestly. It hurts mentally to be constantly swinging, and eventually you need to make a decision. But it is great. So let it stew, okay? So we have gone through 5 tips and tricks, ideas of what we did when we were making a decision of going to Norway. Just to recap: SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunity, threat. Do not storm a country in heavy gear. Then it was the visit, so that you can have a look at the place and get a first-hand experience. Then it was the crunching number phase, where you get down your numbers to make sure they work for you. Then you do more research, because who doesn't love research? And after you've got all that information, you let your ideas stew and you think about it. And that's essentially what we did. But like I told you, our answer was no until the very last minute. So let me tell you a little bit more about that. It's not that we did not want to go to Norway. We did, because the country looks lovely. What you read about it sounds amazing. I mean, yes, it's a socialist country, but it's a country that seems to take care of its people. From what we've heard from the couple that lives in the town where we'll be moving, the wife filed a petition during the COVID pandemic to allow family members to visit them, and the government listened before they shut down the borders, but they listened and they allowed it. Also, the gap between the rich and the poor isn't as big like, let's say, here in UK. They have safe nets in place to help people in need. And so on paper, it sounded amazing. And you would be thinking, well, then why did you say no? I mean, it sounds great. Well, my partner and I have over a decade of life here in the UK. Over a decade of memories, emotional attachments, friends, things we still want to do here. And so our no was not only based on the risk of, if we go to Norway and it doesn't turn out to be as good as it sounds on paper, then what? It was also the case of, we're leaving behind a decade of our life. We are essentially disconnecting or unplugging ourselves from this environment we know through and through, and we're putting ourselves somewhere where we don't know anything, where we don't know the language, don't know the people, don't know the culture. There is so much unknown about this move and how it's actually going to turn out, that we wanted to play it safe. We wanted to go for the low risk, low reward scenario where we would stay comfortable. But you don't grow in your comfort zone. You don't earn in your comfort zone. You don't experience in your comfort zone. And ultimately, we both doubt that we can provide the life our child could have in UK. Don't get me wrong, I will forever love the UK. It has been with me since I've been little. It's home. It really is. But every place reaches an end. For me, at 18, that was Czech Republic. At 18, Czech Republic was done. I was done with the country. It will forever be my birth country, and I'll forever love it for that. But I needed a new place, and that was the UK. And I feel like I have exhausted the UK and what it can give me at this stage. And so we had all this fear and all this uncertainty about the move, and until the very last day. So the company told us that we need to deliver a decision by the first Monday of January. On that Monday, our answer was still no. Until my partner came to me and he was like, I need to talk to you about this decision. We need to talk about it again. Mind you, that Saturday we have decided to say no. And I was like already in the headspace of that's what's gonna happen. We're sticking in UK, great. So when he came to me, I was a bit like, oh, really? Do we need to go through this again? But it was obvious he needed it. And so we sat down, we started chatting about it. And eventually I asked him a question which I feel kind of made the decision turn around. And so I asked my partner, when you think about losing this opportunity in Norway, how does that make you feel? And he said, well, I can't get over it. I've had the whole weekend to make my peace with it, and I cannot. I cannot for the life of me think about not going to Norway. I'm happy to lose the opportunity here in UK, but not in Norway. And so it ended up being the case of, let's do it, because we are actually in the best position to do it right now. Our child is small enough that she doesn't have a concept of friendships, or she won't even have a memory of her time here. We are, well, I'm in my 30s. Well, we're both in our 30s. But we're still young enough to make that move. We can still make it work. And if not now, then when? Honestly. If not now, then when are we gonna do it? So on that day, actually, we have made that decision to say yes. And I know I told you don't make rash decisions. And I assure you it was not a rash decision, because we had 3 months of thinking. And we had all that information that when we had that discussion on Monday, we knew all the risks already. We knew all the possibilities. We knew all the threats and opportunities and strengths and weaknesses and the numbers, and we knew it all. So our yes wasn't rash. Our yes was a calculated risk assessment, where the high risk and the high reward was still scary, but we knew it would be manageable, because all the obstacles that you have seen in the SWOT screenshot I posted, they're temporary. In the bigger scale of things, they're temporary, and we can 100% get over them. And so that's how we turned from no to yes for the one final time. And that day, my partner went to the company, he told them yes, and on the same day, he signed the contract. And that's where we are today. So I hope you like what you heard today and you found it informative, or it gave you an idea of what you could do if you're struggling with making a decision. Of course, if you have any questions or you want to chat about this a bit more, do let me know in the comment section below. I'm always more than happy to chat. And like I said before, I'm happy to make a community of people wanting to switch places and go to new environments or countries to improve their life. And we need to have support, you know? It's important. But yeah, if you like what you heard, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, thumbs down. That's equally as awesome. If you want to hear more about the content that I'll be releasing, anything about immigration, relocation, settling, there's a bunch of videos coming out soonish, hopefully, or sooner than this one did. Then don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out. Otherwise, I will see you in my next one.